In Nigeria, with Damaturu on lockdown, security forces continue to flush out suspected members of Boko Haram. The scientist who helped identify Ebola in 1976 shares his thoughts on the current outbreak in West Africa. And pop diva Madonna does a whirlwind tour of Malawi. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Somalia's capital city was rocked Wednesday by a suicide car bombing attack on a United Nations convoy that killed at least 3 people. The assault happened in Mogadishu near the city's heavily secured international airport that is home to foreign embassies and a UN base. A UN spokesman says none of its workers were injured or killed in the blast. The terrorist group Al-Shabaab is claiming responsibility for the attack, saying in a statement that its fighters had targeted a convoy of foreign mercenaries and their posted allies. The Al-Qaeda-aligned group has steadily lost ground in Somalia to African Union forces, but has carried out bombings in Mogadishu in recent years. Well, for more on today's attack, we are joined by Daoud Awais, a reporter with VOA Somali Service. Hello, Daoud.
Nice to see you.
Yes, now this attack that has taken place in Mogadishu, I mean, it's one after a very long time. Is it a resurgency of the activities of Al-Shabaab again in Mogadishu?
I think the activities of Al-Shabaab are still active in Mogadishu. When we are talking about this group, when they were driven out from the capital in 2011, they changed their strategy into guerrilla war. And whenever they got the chance, they take that chance in a very, very active role. And recently, for the last 3-4 days, they have been carrying out killing of some officials and some experts in the capital, and they also murdered some government officials in the city center. So this was another attack by the group, which is taking advantage of some security lapses that they find in the capital. They are now in the guerrilla system. They don't confront the government forces and the Amazon forces face to face, because they change their strategy when they face it a full strength of the international community. They're now changing their guerrilla, carrying out an attack here and there, and that's how they want to survive.
Now, they're talking about attacking what they see as mercenaries and their allies. What do they mean by that?
To them, any international agency or any international official who is supporting the Somali government is like a mercenary, because they say clearly in their strategy that they don't want foreigners in the country, they don't want the African Union force in the country, they don't recognize the UN mission in Somalia. So despite this is a UN mission in Somalia, helping the Somali people, helping the Somali government to stabilize and to put things in order, they claim and they see these the groups that are supporting the government are mercenaries. They call them non-Muslims. So this is kind of propaganda to show the people that they are doing the right thing.
Now, despite the fact that people have been killed in the recent weeks, recent months, how is the general security situation in Mogadishu and the surrounding areas?
And the general security in Mogadishu is relatively calm, and sometimes you can say it keeps changing due to some differences also going on now. The current political dispute between the president and the prime minister has affected many security institutions, because you find that some ministers are siding with the president, some are siding with the prime minister. So some of these ministers are responsible of some security portfolios. So you find that when there is a kind of dispute in the government, things are not going smoothly. So Al-Shabaab are taking advantage of that also to try to undermine the government and its efforts to stabilize the country. So those are the kinds that Al-Shabaab takes advantage.
What are you hearing about the strategy now to confront this enemy that is attacking using guerrilla tactics?
And Al-Shabaab uses different strategies to attract or maybe to woo the people. For example, in some southern areas, southern regions in Somalia, when they were in control, they were making people happy by showing some kind of justice, because people who are complaining about injustices, they were claiming about some problems of clanism, something like that. So Al-Shabaab tries to attract people to show that they are in the good position and they are to be supported. So it happens that when there are some fighters of Al-Shabaab hiding in the community, people do not report to the security institutions, so that Al-Shabaab takes that advantage of having some supporters among the communities.
Well, Daoud, thank you very much. while Dauda Weiss is a reporter with the VOA's Somali service. In neighboring Kenya, non-Muslims started fleeing Tuesday from the northern town of Mandera after 36 non-Muslim workers were killed by Islamic extremists at a quarry in the area. A large queue of people seeking refuge formed outside an Air Force base in the town amid fears of further violence.
And that's why we have come here to the military camp to see how the government can help us with this issue, because they're saying the town is safe, that there is security. But from what we have seen, we are afraid that even in the places where we have rented houses, we can be attacked there, and we do not know what will be next.
Another worker, Paul Kamau, says the benefits are no longer worth the risk.
We are just here risking our lives. I don't see the reason why we are here. There is no need for us to stay here when our friends are being killed.
Those fleeing say they don't feel safe and the group could attack again. Kenyans have grown increasingly critical of President Uhuru Kenyatta for failing to do more to defend the East African nation from the incessant militant attacks, which have killed well over 200 people since 2013. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for much of the bloodshed and says it will keep it up to persuade Kenya to pull its troops out of the neighboring Somalia, where its forces have joined other African Union troops battling the militants. The militants have been driven out of several strongholds in Somalia by an offensive by African Union and Somalia troops this year, but analysts say it would not prevent the group from carrying out guerrilla-style attacks or striking abroad. As with past attacks, Al-Shabaab said it was punishing Kenya for sending troops to join African peacekeepers battling the Islamists in Somalia. In a statement, it put the death toll at 40 and called the victims Kenyan crusaders. Well, turning now to West Africa, the battle for Damaturu, the Yobe state capital in Nigeria's northeast, may have been won by the military, but security forces and some youth volunteers are searching every part of the town to root out suspected members of the terror group who launched Monday's attack. We get more in this report from Channels TV, our broadcast partner in Nigeria.
Damaturu after the storm. All appears calm, albeit an uneasy one, as the residents have been forced to stay out of the streets and roads following a 24-hour curfew declared by the state government. This is to enable security operatives carry out what they term a mop-up operation after the gun battle between the military and Boko Haram terrorists that sent shockwaves across the state and throughout the country.
At the moment, troops are ensuring the protection of the entire community with the active involvement of the Nigerian Air Force. The whole invasion was put on hold and gave an opportunity to pursue them. The pursuit is still on, and we believe that apart from the casualties they suffered yesterday, a number of them will be apprehended. The kind of cooperation we want is such that, as much as possible, helps the military operations to keep civilians out of harm's way. And that will mean to provide information and stay off.
The Yobe state government says the imposition of the curfew would offer security operatives ample opportunity to free it from any further attack. And the operation is said to be yielding some results already, as some of the insurgents who were trapped in the town after the attack are being rounded up by the military. Residents say security operatives, in conjunction with other volunteers, have been walking round the town to arrest the militants. Some structures at the base were also said to have been torched by the sect members. The mobile police base was the first to be attacked by the insurgents as they made their way to the town on Monday.
Well, there have been calls for more help from the United States to help stem the terrorist menace in Nigeria. For more on that, we check in with VOA's Pentagon correspondent, Carla Babb. Hello, Carla.
Hi.
Now, what do we know regarding the U.S. assistance, if there is any, to the Nigerian military?
Well, the latest news is that the U.S. military has halted their training program that they had with the Nigerian military. Keep in mind, though, that they had already been two of those stages completed, where they started with people who had not been trained and gave them basic military training. Now, they halted this because they say this was by the request of the Nigerian government. So apparently there are some strained ties there. I know that the United States is wanting more from the Nigerian government. The Nigerian government is wanting more from the United States military. But let's talk about what they are doing right now. They're still doing intelligence sharing. They're still having sanctions for the past couple years against Boko Haram, which has been straining Boko Haram there. And then they've been giving money. The entire U.S. government, USAID, has given $4.5 million to help with survivors, to help with their recovery, and then an additional $20 million when it comes to educating people in Northern Africa.
Now, from what you're hearing, what prevents the United States from going full blast, kind of like really going for Boko Haram and rooting them out?
Well, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but there are several fronts that the United States has. Just look at what's going on in Afghanistan. They're trying to wind down there, but there's still going to be about 10,000 troops in Afghanistan. With the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, that really kind of caught the United States by surprise. They had to put a lot more resources than they were expecting, a lot quicker than they were expecting. I just spoke to Colonel Steve Warren, who told me yesterday that there were 1,120 airstrikes between Iraq and Syria. They've put in about 3,000 troops there. And then let's not forget, right there in Africa, there's the big Ebola crisis that's going on. There have been thousands of United States troops there, millions of dollars being spent to try to stop the Ebola virus from spreading.
Yeah, but very briefly, for those who may not know, the U.S. is still engaged with the Nigerian government.
Oh, yes, they're still very much engaged. Like I said, they did complete 2 phases of that training. They're still going through intelligence sharing. But let's remember, I know the Christmas season is upon us, but the United States military is not Santa Claus. It can't just dish out millions and millions of dollars without expecting things in return. And the Nigerian government has been facing a lot of criticism because of human rights abuses, alleged human rights abuses between the military, between the government, and they have to come to accountability there, and they have to protect their citizens. There was a bombing just last week. Over 100 people were killed there. So they've got to do more on their end to show that they can handle the government gifts from the U.S. military.
But still, no word or sign of boots on the ground in Nigeria, at least anytime soon.
No boots on the ground. They reiterated that in a statement that they gave out on Monday. They are stretched very thin right now, and they want the Nigerian government and the Nigerian military to take the lead on this.
Well, Carla, thank you very much for your reporting.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb reporting live there for us. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, well, the man who helped identify the Ebola virus almost 40 years ago shares his thoughts on the current outbreak. Stay with us.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
The battle against Ebola does not end when a patient survives the virus. I am Dr. Conde Greaves. Many survivors return home to their villages only to face stigma based on fear and ignorance. We must fight against stigma and welcome Ebola survivors back into our communities. They are no longer contagious and pose no threat to you. Thousands of orphan children also need your support. Imagine losing your mother and father to Ebola. Their tragedy is often compounded by rejection and isolation when they return home. This is wrong. They are not sick. We must welcome orphan children back into our communities. They have suffered enough. We must also respect our healthcare workers. Many have given their own lives so that others may have a fighting chance. Learn the facts about Ebola. Knowledge is life.
Welcome back. African nations are among the world's most corrupt, according to Transparency International. Well, the Watchdog Group released its annual corruption report on Wednesday, ranking 175 countries on a scale of 0 to 100, showing corrupt to clean. The report notes that 92% of sub-Saharan nations scored below 50 points, which signifies significant corruption. Now, the most corrupt country on the continent is Somalia, with 8 points out of 100. The least corrupt Sub-Saharan nation is Botswana with 63 points, followed by Ivory Coast and Mali. Both made significant gains in this year's index. Nigeria and South Africa improved, but they are still under 50 points. Daniel Dadis, Senior Policy Director for Transparency International, says that the corruption index is important.
This corruption perceptions index does have an impact on how particularly countries that provide foreign aid target that aid and to which countries. There is a growing awareness within the international community that corruption is a huge issue, whether you're talking about economic development, whether you're talking about social development in terms of healthcare, education, sanitation. Corruption has an impact on all of those things. And so you have donor nations putting pressure on recipient nations to improve their governance and fight corruption.
Well, although Africa is concerned with corruption, illicit financial flows from the continent are quickly draining Africa and depriving Africa of its resources for investment and development. Now to the fight against Ebola. U.S. President Barack Obama is urging Congress to pass $6.2 billion in emergency funding to fight the deadly virus. That's before the holiday recess in a few weeks.
We cannot beat Ebola without more funding. If we want other countries to keep stepping up, we will have to continue to lead the way. And that's why I'm calling on Congress to approve our emergency funding request to fight this disease before they leave for the holidays. It's a good Christmas present to the American people and to the world.
Well, speaking at the National Institutes of Health near Washington Tuesday, the president says it was exciting news that there were no serious side effects during the first phase of clinical tests of a potential Ebola vaccine. He noted that no other Ebola drug has progressed this far to date. Ebola has killed nearly 7,000 people in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, along with a handful of people in other countries. Well, the Ebola virus was identified in the 1970s in a tiny village in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where an intrepid team of researchers ventured to learn more. Among them was a U.S.-born David Heymann, now a professor of epidemiology at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. VOA's Henry Ridgwell spoke to the professor about the current outbreak in West Africa.
David Heymann witnessed the emerging threat of Ebola from its origins in the rainforests of the Democratic Republic of Congo, then Zaire, in 1976.
In fact, fear was so great that one of my first assignments was to go out to NASA to collect the isolation unit that had been used for the astronauts when they came off the moon.
Arriving at the village of Yambuku, the centre of the outbreak, Heymann and his team knew little about Ebola. They named the virus after the local river.
Ebola was considered a major threat back in 1976 because nothing was known about the virus. It was known it was related to, or it appeared to be related to, a Marburg virus, which people understood, science understood basically.
Since then, scientists have discovered that fruit bats carry the virus and pass it on to primates, including humans.
There was an outbreak in Gabon in 1996 when there were 18 hunters who killed a chimpanzee, and all 18 of them somehow, during the butchering process, became infected, took the infection home and infected family members, but it didn't spread further.
Professor Heymann led the global response to the 2003 SARS virus outbreak in China. The disease killed more than 700 people, but was contained.
It spread into developing countries in Asia, and it was rapidly stopped there by a global effort. And this was a true coordinated global effort where scientists were working together behind the scenes, exchanging information on almost a daily basis.
In contrast, Heymann says early appeals for help with the current Ebola outbreak were ignored.
There wasn't a robust enough response to stop it while it was still rural, and now it's spread into urban areas where it's more difficult.
There are indications that the Ebola education campaigns in West Africa are helping to halt the spread of the virus. New medicines are being fast-tracked. Professor Heyman says another area of research should also be prioritized.
To determine how best to keep patients alive by maintaining their internal balance of electrolytes, of chemicals, so that they can stay alive long enough for their own immune system to take over.
The World Health Organization says close to 6,000 people have died from Ebola in West Africa since the outbreak began. Professor Heyman is optimistic that the spread of the virus will have been halted by the beginning of the new year. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Well, still to come on Africa 54, Bilbo and Gandalf are back. And Middle-earth is celebrating. The details in what's trending, but first, a recap of Wednesday's headlines.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. U.S. President Barack Obama renews call for $6 billion in emergency Ebola funding. He also commends progress made on a vaccine. In Somalia, at least 4 people are dead in a car bomb explosion near a UN convoy in the capital of Mogadishu. In Kenya, hundreds flee town of Mandera to military barracks seeking safety from Al-Shabaab. That's after Kenyan police chief resigns and the interior minister is removed from positions by President Uhuru Kenyatta following an Al-Shabaab massacre. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Like Voice of America on Facebook. Follow VOA on Twitter. Join VOA on our YouTube channel. Like, follow, join VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Now, a warm send-off for Madonna had 2 adopted children. Well, hundreds of kids gathered on the pop star's final day in Malawi, where she is now a Goodwill ambassador for child welfare. On this trip, Madonna, David and Mercy visited 2 of the 10 schools funded by her charity, Raising Malawi. These schools are educating more than 5,600 students. She also met President Peter Mutharika as well as Yohane Mbanda, father of her adopted son. Well, next up, if you have a Madonna-sized fortune, here's a new way to travel in style. Now, welcome to the Sky Lounge, a high-flying hangout for Taiwan's growing business elite. It might look like a cocktail lounge in an upmarket hotel, but this is actually squeezed into the cabin of a China Airlines jet. Passengers can serve their own drinks and snacks and take a book from the library to read. The cabin is decorated with lampshades, wooden veneer. Even the porcelain tableware has a distinctive Chinese painted design. And finally, London rolled out the green carpet for the world's premiere of the new Hobbit movie. Fans in costume cheered as stars such as actor Orlando Bloom shook hands and signed autographs. The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, is the third and final installment of the mega-hit trilogy. It opens worldwide later this month, and that is what is trending today. Well, now, some of Africa's top footballers are taking part in a new public service video aimed to raise awareness about Ebola. One of the players is Sierra Leone's national Kay Kamara of Major League Soccer Columbus Crew Club. In an interview with Awosani Young, he says the athletes want healthcare workers to know, we've got your back. Here's a first look.
Win or lose, we treat it as life or death. But it's not.
Our fans treat us as heroes, but I'm no hero.
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 We're passing this message around to let people know that we're not the heroes when it comes to stuff like this. You know, we've never tackled a disease. The video explains all that. I mean, the health workers out there risking their lives for these patients, they're the true heroes. I mean, for us, we're playing soccer or football around the world. We've been given such a privilege, you know, to represent not just ourselves, representing our continent of Africa. I'm speaking, you know, for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking for the other guys who will be the same thing. We're really happy to be on board and being able to spread this message together.
Health workers, you are the true heroes, and we support you.
Well, Voice of America is working with the We've Got Your Back campaign, along with NGOs, sports, and other media organizations to distribute Ebola messages to you, our audience in Africa. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings, Today Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words. This word has to do with health care in the United States.
John Boehner, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, does not like President Barack Obama's health care reforms.
Why did the president mislead the American people when he promised they could keep their health care plan? Why is Obamacare forcing Americans to lose access to the doctors they like?
The Affordable Care Act, often called Obamacare, is the president's program to provide health care for Americans.
Despite early problems with the program's website, the White House hopes that many Americans will use Obamacare to get health care.
Now, when you hear the word Obamacare, you will know what this news word means.